to everyone here from the Sabermetrics Network. I'm Brandon Warne, and today I'll be taking you through a FanGraphs piece that went up in the last week, written by David Cameron, that I think is a really interesting and on-point example of how pitching could be put together in a more cheaply way to maybe just change the landscape of baseball. So let's dig right in. This one's called A More Radical Pitching Staff Proposal, and it's dated June 21st, so just about a week ago. And basically what Dave is suggesting, and I'll break it down here for you, is that teams throw about 1,450 innings pitched per season. They face 6,175 hitters. Now this is obviously generally speaking. That means that there's 38 batters that come to the plate for each team per game. When you figure that an average plate appearance is 3.8 pitches seen, a pitcher, the pitching staff of a team throws about 145 pitches per game. That breaks down to about 97 for the starter and about 48 soaked up by probably an average of 3 relievers per game, because the average reliever throws about 17 pitches. So what Dave is suggesting that could be done is that a team that maybe doesn't have any standout pitchers could redistribute the way the work goes, and they could have 3 groups of pitchers that would work. Basically, each pitcher would get 10 batters, be limited to about 38 pitches. And basically what would happen in that event is every time it's your turn to work, regardless of leverage, regardless of what's going on in the game, you face your 10 batters. Now, obviously, if there's struggles or that kind of thing, you're going to want to keep a 13th pitcher on hand. Or what might happen, too, is you got 3 groups of 4 pitchers. You're already at 12 pitchers. You may need a 13th pitcher for extra inning games. What he suggested was you might try to find a Micah Owings or a Brooks Kieschnick type of guy who can both hit and pitch. Now, obviously, those type of talents are rather rare. But basically, you're not going to have the opposing manager stack his lineup against you. He's not going to have a bunch of lefties because you've got righties, or vice versa, like you might see Joe Madden when he bats certain guys clean up that mash lefties or anything like that. But what this really can do for a pitching staff is if you have a staff that doesn't have any standouts. Now, obviously, if you have standouts, you're not going to want to do it. If you have the Phillies rotation with Cole Hamels and Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee, this doesn't make sense for you. But if you've got a rotation like the Twins, or even something like the Rockies are doing right now, but I'll focus on the Twins because I know them a little better, you're obviously not putting much money out towards pitching. You don't have a lot of top-end talent, but a lot of guys who are roughly equivalently the same, and that's basically the Twins to a T. You just run them out there, and basically you can keep your costs down on pitching because, let me backtrack just a second here. Research has shown that the first time a pitcher faces a starting pitcher faces a team coming through, they have a triple slash of 247, 310, 393. That progressively gets higher. Now the second time, the average is 260, 321, 417, and by the third time that a team is facing a starting pitcher, that line is up to 271, 332, 444. So basically a Ryan Doman type player at the end there. So you see there's an obvious shift towards the end of the game where once batters have seen pitchers that many times, they can hit them a little bit better. So what this plan is basically doing is proposing only letting that first platoon split come to fruition, and in the event of any hiccup, maybe 1 or 2 hitters gets to see a pitcher for the second time. So you can effectively make league average pitchers pitch a little better because they can have a reliever mentality, but also just because they're naturally going to be better the first time they face somebody in a game. So you can keep the costs down when it comes to building an offense, a pitching staff, and that allows you to allocate more money to your offense, and maybe will allow a team to be balanced a little bit differently. Plus, it's going to pose a ton of matchup problems for teams that don't do anything like that. Now, some of the caveats listed as we go through the comment section was that you'd obviously have to adapt a hierarchy of that all the way through your minors, including drafting and signing players and bringing players in from the outside, and that could be obviously quite difficult. But basically it seems like it would be something that could be tried, on a team that's obviously not destined to go to the World Series or anything. Again, I bring up the Twins or the Rockies, both teams that are struggling so far this year in their respective leagues. But I think it would be an interesting social experiment. The problem becomes it's so drastic. It's even more drastic than Moneyball was at the time that Moneyball came out, that you see a GM or a scouting director or a field manager basically run the risk of losing their job and getting blackballed from baseball for the rest of their careers if it doesn't work out. So I think in that sense, with the amount of risk that is going to be inherent to an experiment of this type, we probably won't see it anytime soon. But I think it's something that should be or could be implemented by a number of different clubs that are in the major leagues right now. With that, that's all I have for you today. So thanks for joining Sabermetrics Network today, and hope to see you next week.